All right, so that was more excited than I meant to do. Whoa! So it says James.
We're kind of getting silly today.
We got it. James Earl Jones steps back from voicing Darth Vader, signs off on using archive recordings to recreate voice with AI. I used the most reasonable headline because a lot of them were far more dystopian sounding.
Well, it is dystopian, and I think maybe more depressing that he signed off on it. But at least they wanted his permission, his blessing for it. At least they aren't just straight up stealing his voice and stealing his image the way that they deepfaked Carrie Fisher or the way that they are deepfaking other stars. I find it grotesque that they do that without even asking, or
at the very least,
without
he's still
compensation,
alive.
Without permission of any kind.
I don't know if there was no compensation for Carrie Fisher's family.
But that's for her estate, and I don't even think that that's fair because think about the way that they were using Chadwick Boseman's Twitter account to promote Black Panther. It is a violation of someone's very conscience and identity.
So it says James Earl Jones, who has voiced Darth Vader for nearly 50 years of the Star Wars films, seems to be stepping away from the role. According to Vanity Fair, the 91-year-old actor has signed off on archival footage, voice recordings being used by young filmmakers who plan to utilize artificial intelligence, synthetic speech technology to recreate Jones' younger voice from his previous films for future Lucasfilm projects. So what I saw was it's owned by by two groups. It's owned by Lucasfilm Ltd. and the company called Respeecher, which is a Ukrainian company, which is really funny. They snuck in virtue signals into this article.
How so?
Because they're it was before the attack on Ukraine. They hired this company and now they worked through the
okay.
Yeah, they had to work that in there. So it says the company has enlisted the assistance of Respeecher, a Ukrainian startup that uses AI technology to craft new conversations from revitalized old recordings. Respeecher's relationship with Lucasfilm began with the Disney Plus series The Book of Boba Fett, for which they recreated the voice of young Luke Skywalker. The two also teamed together for the voice performance of Darth Vader in the series Obi-Wan Kenobi, which debuted on Disney Plus this summer. I am terrified that one day Disney's going to be marketing that we're going to be 100 years in the future. Disney owns the world because they seem to be infallible no matter how much we say get woke, go broke. They don't ever seem to go broke. They seem to just be fine. And one day when they own the world and they're marketing a bunch of meds that you don't know whether James Earl Jones, imagine they're get your gender affirming care from Disney and it'll be James Earl Jones' voice speaking it.
Because they want to own his personhood, not just the sound of his voice.
Yes.
I think that's really...
His voice is tied to his personhood.
What this
it's
threatens.
Very distinct.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, I actually saw the YouTuber Shane Dawson try out this Respeecher tool on his YouTube channel a couple of years ago on his own voice, and it recreated sentences in his voice with very little sample from him speaking to it. The technology is shockingly developed already. I'm sure it's gotten better since then even.
Noted and fun.
Yeah.
Brett, to your previous point, while the company is definitely kind of a monolith to the point that it really can go super duper broke, I believe some of the shareholders were basically writing the heads of Disney to stop being political in content and in philosophy in order so the company would stop losing value in stocks. I think
we were talking about this last week.
This is even farther. This goes back to before summer when Bob Chapek took over as Disney CEO, and he made a pledge on the outset that he wouldn't get Disney involved in politics. To which they immediately, right after that, was right when DeSantis and the parental rights and education bill came out, and since Florida and Disney are inextricably linked. Right? So through the theme park. I always forget, is that Disney World or is that Disneyland? I don't remember which one.
Who knows?
But the point is that they had to get involved in politics because they they're not allowed to not be anymore. And this is Bob Iger's fault for doing it in the first place because he wanted to run for president. You can't unring that bell. I don't believe. So the politics aren't the most interesting part of this. The most interesting part of this story, particular to me, is what they will do with his voice. What will Darth Vader be voicing 50 years from now? Society will be in a completely different place 50 years from now.
Does this mean that he has completely sold the rights to what they can say in his voice, because that sounds like a great way to
they won't be
defame
able to,
somebody.
They won't. How would he do? How legally through contract would he be able to say you can say this or that? But in 50 years, what is acceptable in society might be so outlandish that he wouldn't even have thought to have that written up into a contract.
That's so terrifying.
And the number one thing,
that's why they write these contracts in a way that almost seems open to the possibility of like different technologies that don't exist yet. So like people extending their lives beyond what we think is a normal lifespan today. Mm-hmm. People like transhumanist philosophy is in a way written into contracts these days, selling rights to your image and voice
for perpetuity.
For perpetuity, yes. It's like that's the purpose of that. They are written in a way that also is open to the possibility of like a literal multiverse world becoming like do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They are,
that is a disclosure.
They're controlling for a metaverse and multiverse reality in the future.
That is a hilarious,
in case, just in case.
That is a hilarious legal line that
Disney,
they use, is that we have rights to your likeliness, not only in like this dimension, but in any other possible dimensions.
In the last investor call, Chapek did a long bit about how they're excited about the future of the metaverse for Disney, and it was a mixture of enough like creepy futuristic transhumanism and creepy corporate speak tied together to make anyone nervous.
Synergy.
Corporate
they
synergy.
Just don't know how they come off to people.
Did they say why?
Well, he's just saying, he's like, we're not ready for that market yet, but we will be. It's like, do you want to go on a virtual tour of Disney? Because are you too poor to go to Disneyland? You can just pay us $19.95 to go on a virtual tour.
That's what they're
Disneyland
preparing us for, also by increasing the prices of doing anything in person so exorbitantly.
Yeah.
That it won't be accessible anymore unless you do it digitally.
Yep. To be fair to them, it's not like they can say James Earl Jones advocates for whatever this in my random example. They would have to be like Darth Vader is advertising this thing, but it's his voice.
Well, if anything, it's like he's 91, and not to put the guy down, but why would he be in touch with the possibilities of how they could manipulate this tool? Why would he ever be able to predict that?
It's
when
manipulation.
He's grown up and had his entire career play out before, like mostly before the internet existed.
Shouldn't even be
and
able
now
to
that
sell
it
this.
does exist, he's expected to know all of its future capabilities and know the risks that he's agreeing to. It doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't seem like there's going to be lawyers that are going to specialize in this for decades to come, and
that can effectively advocate for people like this.
You shouldn't even be able to do this unless you're like our age and understand the implications of it.
Even then, like no one can understand the implications of this if the metaverse isn't what it will be yet. And I mean, they're literally talking about cross-dimensional business plans.
It's funny because I've known people who talk like this, and everyone talks about them like it's this weird divide where, like, you know how we talk about how like actors are they're really reptilians, not because we actually think they're reptilians, but a lot of them, CEOs, high-powered people, have a unending fascination with immortality and existing beyond the bounds of what humanity thinks is capable. What we think we're capable of, right? Because with that amount of success, once you've reached that level of fame, fortune, and you've done that much in your life that's gone right, you start to think in a way that's like, am I more than a mere mortal? At least in concept, in ideas, am I more than a human being? So it's not like this is new to this level of person in the world, right? Like a CEO, a Fortune 500 company employee who's at the executive level, they would be obsessed with this type of stuff. And Disney, as a profit-seeking entity, is really looking at it through the means of how are we going to stay relevant for the next 100 years as technology changes so rapidly.
Well, sorry to harken it back to the legal lines, but I just think that's the most interesting part, the disclosures. I think, in a way, one of the reasons why they're so stringent is that now we live in a world where what are facts really? And to the point where I bet it could affect the legal realm. And Disney is such a litigious company because oh my God, I wish I know how to say this in English. It embarks so many different things. You know, it's not, they have like their physical spaces, they have their different entertainments, they have these like licensing deals. Like they're all over. They have merchandising. They're all over the place. So I'm sure that they've had a bunch of lawsuits where they've lost because of some hippy-dippy kinds of wording. And I think they get so rambunctiously silly with their legalese in order to not have any of a shadow of a doubt that about how much they own the rights to this thing.
I remember there was a Bill Nye the Science Guy lawsuit, and I don't remember the exact details of it. Basically, he had a contract with a company before Disney, and then Disney bought that company, and it had something to do with home video rights.
Okay.
And then as they started streaming stuff that involved Bill Nye, this might have been either Disney or Netflix. Basically, he argued that like this is home video release now. It's not coming out on an actual videotape that you're buying. And so now as all of these methods of watching things change, as the methods of experiencing things in the real world change, i.e. the metaverse and things like that, I don't see this being good for a person's ability to control their own image. I mean, even college athletes now have the ability to license their name. Like there's what are called name.
We just had the lights flicker.
Lights, is everything okay, guys?
Let us know in the chat if everything's all right.
If we're still good. It says we're
Sorry
still good.
Sorry to overreact.
But like they have name, image, likeness deals where you can basically make money off your own name now. So everything is a product, right? So James Earl Jones, his voice is synonymous with who he is.
Right.
I don't see it ending well. There's going to be something that they're going to use Darth Vader to advertise in the next 50 years that he might not have,
It's
wanted to do.
Insanely unethical. And I think you framed this as like Disney is looking for how to stay relevant in the next century or two, and they don't want to become obsolete. And now it looks like the stars that make these IPs Disney acquires and Disney itself relevant will also become obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he's like an early adopter of this. Like he's one of the people that he sold his voice, I'm sure, for like a decent chunk. But there will be improprieties to people that do this for sure, I bet. And their family and their estate will defend them. And I feel like there has to be people like this to basically sign off blindly. Or honestly, I don't know. I haven't read the contract. Maybe he's like, you can't endorse political candidates with my voice. You can only use my voice for characters that I've been associated in this dimension or any other.
They'll only be able to voice it as Darth Vader, but maybe in 50 years, Darth Vader will be selling you gender-affirming care from some Disney clinic that's going to exist. It's going to happen. I'm telling you. Actually, wouldn't that be spot on? Like they use Darth Vader to do it.
Those aren't my pronouns.
But so, and I want to call back to this movie that I keep meaning to watch and I never do. It's called The Congress, starring Robin Wright and Paul Giamatti. And it's about Robin Wright plays a fictionalized version of herself who sells her likeness to a studio. And they basically do like 3D renderings of her so that they can use her as an actress in whatever they want, rather than have to actually have her on set to do it. And that's the impetus for this science fiction movie. I didn't see it's a French film, but that was in 2013. So this idea is not anything new. It's just we're creepily seeing it actually come into the real world, and it's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, now it's to the point where I guess we're at the point where we can fathom the consequences that can come of this.
Yeah. And
also the technology is to the point where we can also conceive of how accurate it may sound and how convincing it may sound.
We already know that there are some, maybe we don't know this, but we can make an educated guess that AI isn't capable of imitating certain things that only human beings can do, like interpreting emotion and tone. That hasn't been accomplished by AI yet. But I saw this story about an independent film being made incrementally by this German well, really, he doesn't know anything about filmmaking, but he used to own a company called iQuant that he sold in 2018. Basically, he knows a lot about AI, and he's been using different AI generators to incrementally build a sci-fi film with
So dystopian.
I don't know if it's dystopian or not, but like he's using an audience on Twitter to vote based on what they want the plot to develop in this crude filmmaking process.
What do you think about that?
So like he's using text generator to write a script. He's using an AI generated voice equipment to like voice these different characters in the story. He's using AI to generate images, and he manipulates them to zoom and jiggle to look like they're moving.
So he's actually
scenes.
editing it. He's actually creating. It's not like he's dumping
editing
stuff
parts of
in
it.
a timeline. It's interesting because, to me, this reminds me of like a lot of network TV shows for a while. We're doing a thing where they would do like when text voting became really big for like not Survivor, but for he's like Survivor for like American Idol and stuff. They did a thing on like one of the Hawaii 5-0 where it's like. As you watch this episode, they let you vote for the ending for like one of 3 endings.
It's like American Idol, but for an actual plot.
And then the poor actors had to film 3 different versions of the ending so they could figure out which one would be the actual ending for it.
There's a video game that's called Mass Effect. It's a trilogy, and the ending wasn't like a happy-go-lucky ending where the character rides off into the sunset. He basically, I mean, spoilers, he dies. And the fans were so upset about it that the company launched a huge mea culpa, and they re-released the ending, which
that was a horrible idea.
Is lame.
Yeah,
stand by your product.
By it.
They lack integrity for that, I think.
I agree.
Stand by what you did.
And I asked you before we started shooting, but I think it's worth asking you in front of the cameras.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this? And both of you, honestly. What do you think about...
Oh, thank you for including me.
I included you first, sir, but you weren't paying attention. What do you think about these auto-generated stories where the fans are voting for it? Personally, I think it sucks. And if you don't have agency or the script that you're producing, what are you even doing? But I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Well, Fabian Seltzer, the guy who is producing Salt, said that he has an overarching plan for the plot, but he has already had it thwarted by different plot lines that the viewers have voted on. So he's not really sure how it's going to end yet. And it's like sort of democratizing creative control in a way that I don't think the public really deserves.
I don't even like scripts made by like tons of writers.
That's taking this to like that phenomenon to its worst extreme, I think. And it also, like, what it sounds like in the headlines, an AI generated film that is narrated by a viewer, what you immediately go to is like Neuralink.
Yeah.
Okay, so like if Neuralink were actually a functioning transhumanist technology, then you actually would be able to watch a film and while watching it dictate exactly what happens in it and what you see and what it sounds like and how it makes you feel. That because you would be connected to the internet in your brain and you would be making the film that you're watching. And that's extremely dystopian, like we said. But this is the very crude beginning of that becoming a reality. I don't know if it could, but that's what it sounds like.
The thing that I love about filmmaking is the trial and error. Like for every 5 bad movies, you get one really good one. And the beauty of that is that you saw a lot of trial and error have to go in to make something and that's kind of almost uniquely human in a sense that to try and to fail at an artistic endeavor. I mean, is art really something outside of humanity at this point? Like, do you see art anywhere else with any other species other than humans? It's uniquely human to try to do something artistic and fail at it.
But the question now is, can we mix human creativity with AI technology effectively to make something that is just as good or at least mediocre as what we had before.
I get really iffy. Like when we were reading the stuff about the CEO who's talking about making AI generated art. I get real iffy about that because it's not that I don't think that a CEO or somebody in the sciences can't be an artist. Mm-hmm. It's that I worry that they're not understanding the purpose of it when it's at that scale, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I want to see that. I like the human element of it, of an individual trying to create something within at the very least in film, within a coalition of people. But that's people you're working with. It's even a lot of people who are working nowadays who are working remote, like maybe they're doing animation for a film and they're not working on set, or there's people that aren't working on set. It's a different process for the people actually working on the set of a film as opposed to the people who work remotely, right? So these are all vastly different ways to experience art, but it's still human.
Have you guys heard of Twitch Plays Pokemon?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. This is a perfect parallel.
And you guys host a pop culture podcast?
I didn't mean it that way. So, but I think you think it's a very interesting social experiment. So Twitch Plays Pokemon is a Twitch channel where you put in chat the inputs that you want to happen in the game. And so let's say the chat is just full of us three. Brett writes down, I write down, Mary presses A. So the character on the screen is going to go down, down, and then the A button command is going to happen. And so the point of this was, can chat, thousands upon thousands of people, beat the game?
Okay.
And so, spoilers, they did. But originally, they got stuck in... I mean, it took forever in the beginning because obviously some people would give contrary directions to meme. And it got to a part where it was a puzzle where you had to move in certain directions.
Yeah, even crowdsourcing it outwards means that you're not guaranteeing that the people that you're getting the opinions of actually are going to care about what you're making.
Correct.
Right? So that bothers me. Like it's like whenever these like a school or something says, let's leave it up to our viewers on Facebook what we name this thing, and inevitably the internet gives it some awful name because they don't take it as seriously as you do. I don't like that.
Snot Wars 2 or Electric Boogaloo.
But
Yeah,
when
exactly.
these tech professionals are talking about AI generating films, they're talking about it in terms of time optimization and cost effectiveness, because that's their wheelhouse. That's what they consider important, and not what makes it the most beautiful. So they said, we can make it cheaper and faster to produce films, which today can involve hundreds of people, take several years, and cost millions of dollars. Why is it a problem, though, that it would take that long and take that much money and cooperation among hundreds of people? Is that a bad thing?
I think because these companies only care about their bottom line and stakeholder revenue. Oh, wait, is it stakeholder or shareholder?
Shareholder.
Is shareholder revenue.
Stakeholder's different, right?
And so whether or not the final content is good, if they can churn out some crap that cost them little to no overhead, they got some profit for it, and it was, financially beneficial, they'll do it anyway. That's why I keep harping on my one-man band of Art is Dead, because sure, it on the lower niche scale, some people find some artistic value from this one guy they heard once, and good for you. But on the society mass scale of us like coming together through art, I just don't see it anymore.
I think that I disagree that art is dead, but mainly because I put more value on the individual, seeing the one artist they saw that one time. That to me is more of what art is than the corporatized version that we see now, though you're not wrong that that's the more prevalent form of art now. But to me, the scary part about it, what you said earlier, is that it's a constant battle between creatives who just want to make something beautiful and financiers and executives who want to make something that will sell for the cheapest amount of money. And that battle, which is eternal in that industry and goes on forever. It's why I harp on the people who always talk about how they're profession is so important and they're artists. I'm like, you're corporate artists, but you're still artists, I suppose. But I understand the beauty of that struggle, right? So the idea of making it about optimization and about making it about and really making it utilitarian doesn't sit right with me. But I understand now I understand also that that's a very like, middle of the road position to have on this. I think most people are weary of this type of stuff. If anything, the people who are like full on like, yeah, let's just dive into it are probably on the outskirts of that right now. But also I do want to posit that when most people talk about AI generated art and they look at it and it does have like an uncanny valley quality to it, and I imagine the same will hold true of the films.
Salt definitely feels uncanny valley.
Can I ask you guys what that means, uncanny valley? I've heard that reference so often.
It looks almost
something that's
real.
almost human, but isn't.
But I would wonder if you gave. I would love to have a survey done and have a bunch of people not told what art is. And I don't even know if you could even give parameters, right? Show people 500 photos, right? And if they can pick out which ones were created by an AI program and which ones were created by an actual human being, I think that just telling them that it's AI generated art in a way biases them against it. You see the uncanny valley in it because you know that it wasn't created by a human being. Right? So if you showed somebody that same piece of art and said, so-and-so made this, they'd be like, oh, that's cool.
I'm not sure I agree.
I didn't say yes or no. I said I would like to see a study done on whether that would change anything.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, I feel the bias would be in the opposite direction now because there's still this lingering tech optimism, more because we're afraid of what the worst case scenario is and we don't want to admit it to ourselves. So, watching something that is AI generated, or at least in part is AI generated, mainstream audiences right now might be tempted to have a more positive view of it just because you seemingly accomplished so much with so little.
That might be generational. I feel like Gen Z would be more amenable to AI art than previous generations.
I think I have seen some examples of AI generated art that really does look human-like.
Well, I'm not even saying like it has to be art of people that look human. I'm saying it has to be look at a picture that's created through an AI art. What's that Midjourney? Whatever the programs are, and if you can tell me which ones are created were actually done by a person and which ones were created by an algorithm, I would be interested to see that study and see how many people got it accurately, or if it biases people against it. But
I'm sure studies like that are being conducted as we speak.
Long before that, I say we don't let Morgan Freeman, whatever you do, do not sell your voice to anyone. I don't care how much they offer you. I was talking to Dallas Sonny last night. He said he thinks they probably give him $1 million a year every year to own his voice. Like, if you have a family and you care a lot about your family and you're a family man, that probably sounds really, really good when you're not really thinking about what could this mean long term for the future of art, society, and humanity as a whole. Right? So I don't know.
Even on just selfish grounds, there are reasons that you wouldn't do that.
Ryan Reynolds can sell his voice, though. I'm fine with him selling Ryan Reynolds' voice.
Why is that?
He's just got a very distinct voice, but not as regal or as magnanimous sounding as Morgan Freeman or James Earl Jones.
Yeah, he's top tier quirk. He's
very quirky.
Good old quirky lad.
Well, kind of like, okay, this one might speak to you. Or anybody who's watched movies, you've heard somebody grunt in a movie when they get hit. It's the same grunt every time because it's a sound effect. Ugh! Like, it's the same sound effect every time. Except for in the future, it's going to be like, you're going to want to have a character in your movie that's going to be called Annoying Guy, and it's just going to be Ryan Reynolds' voice for all of them. Because he will be forever known as Annoying Guy.
Is he annoying? I think he's awesome.
I think he's annoying.
I'm not saying he is or isn't. I'm saying that his voice will put him in that category when he is no longer there to be the face to go with the voice.
Classic
right?
Mary Morgan. Why is he annoying, Mary?
I don't know. I don't like someone who pretends to be quirky.
I see.
Or maybe he is quirky.
Is Ryan Reynolds quirky?
And me and Mary got into a whole debate one day about whether Ryan Reynolds was whether
he's
Lively,
not attractive. Yeah.
She doesn't think he's attractive, and she also says that Blake Lively is out of his league. I said they're in the exact same league.
Blake Lively is absolutely out of his league.
She's a dime piece for sure, but isn't he really handsome?
No.
He's a good looking dude, and they're both wealthy, so they're in the same league.
No.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.